Hello and welcome to the Morning Skate podcast. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell as we begin to preview the 2021-22 NHL season. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to start things off with a live Underdog Best Ball draft. Hopefully this is something that you all are interested in because thinking about the season, what better way to put some money on the line, put $10 on the line and, draft against some of our friends, some randoms, and see what sort of rosters we build and all of that good stuff as we get into sort of the run up to the NHL season. So anyway, DJ's here. How you doing, DJ?
Doing pretty good. I mean, it was a Browns Bills winning Sunday while we're recording this. So if you're listening to this, around the time of football season before the season starts, or if you're saving this for a while, just remember back when the Dolphins got murdered by the Bills. It was end of week 2. Yep. So if there's something that we talk about in this video and you're like, well, that's stupid, they took this guy, he got hurt in preseason. Like, obviously, like that's when we're recording it at the end of week 2 of football season. It's September 19th. So if you save this one, just know that we might end up making some real stupid decisions. But overall, I think that, hopefully we can get into the hockey season, which is, I can't believe how soon it is. Like I don't know why I thought it was like towards the end of October. I mean, we are less than a month away.
Yep.
That is crazy to me to think about. But yeah, other than that, I've been doing a lot of stuff on my own, and we're getting into Underdog right now, into best ball. But I did start my own kind of like network of video stuff. And the best way to describe it, I kind of just came up with a real easy tagline of like everything hockey for the visual learner. So what you might be thinking is like, is this going to go in part with everything else we already are doing with morning skate and hopefully fantasy hockey picks and bets? Yes, it's going to be more of like what we talked about on the show. I'm going to try to actually bring video to light on what that is. So like if we talk about player X, Y, or Z having a good Corsi or doing something different, and so the power play changing for team, like the Tampa Bay Lightning or whatever, I want to show that in video work. I want to be able to put that out there so we see it. And I started just putting some content out there, and I started with just breaking down what best ball is, exactly the rules and the different features of Underdog. So if you have no idea what any of this is and you want to start there, just follow me on Twitter. I'm sure you probably already are. I'm going to retweet it off the Morning Skate account, and I put it in the Discord. So find that video, 9 minutes, get the introduction to what best ball even is. But Matt, is there anything you want to talk about before we get started with the draft while we wait?
Yeah, I mean, so while we wait, like you said, DJ, you did a great job sort of covering the literal, like, I've never seen this before. What am I doing? We don't really need to go over that. I do think one of the key sort of like talking points, for a podcast like this or from, people in general, sort of how you win at this is to remember that, like, yes, the regular season obviously matters a lot. As your video covers, you need to basically win your league in the regular season in order to advance to the playoffs. But getting out of the first round only guarantees you like 1.6x your entry fees or whatever. So what makes this unique is that it's a GPP style prize pool, so it's sort of like when you're right, how much can you win? And that's where the area of stacking comes into play for those last few weeks, because, you simply just need to have sort of the top tier output in those weeks in order to actually make, the five, $5 or $10,000 to first? Five. So in order to make that big money, you're really going to need to have like the sort of, think about it like a DFS slate, like in order to win first, you're very rarely going to have a night where, you have, 8 guys who all scored goals and your goalie had a shutout, and, 8 guys on 8 different teams who scored goals. Usually you're stacking teams, because you need to get less things right in order to win. And that's the exact same sort of principle we are applying to, quintessentially season-long fantasy. The projections matter. Like taking bad picks is not good. If you're picking 12th and there's a guy there who, is like the 30th best player and you're picking 12th and 13th, and you're like, all right, let me grab number 12 and then I'm going to reach and grab number 30. That's probably not smart. But it's basically, building in smart correlations into into your best ball teams. So usually the best ways to do that is to sort of, try to pick up correlation later in the draft. Try and plan things out a few rounds ahead of time. It's a really interesting puzzle, and I think that's why it makes for some good content and something that we can talk through, and also basically cover, a lot of player movement and different, thoughts on the regular season as it's about to unfold in front of us here that will also be relevant for DFS purposes. So as I was talking, we went from 4 remaining to 2 remaining. So we do seem to be coming close to starting the draft.
Hopefully we got some friends of the podcast and all that stuff. So
yeah,
we should have at least a few. It should be fun. But yeah, I think you did a good job kind of overlaying a very general strategy, because one thing is I was trying, like I myself, and I know you were going to maybe get involved with trying to go up with like a very direct strategy of how to attack these. I don't know if that's the best philosophy. It's really dependent on what your first couple picks are. So if you're picking 1, 2, or 3, and you're taking McDavid, Matthews, and McKinnon, for example, it's going to kind of change exactly how you're going to end up drafting, I think, the whole time. If you pick 12th at the turn and you decide, you know what, I'm taking Hellebuck, I'm going to take Vasilevsky, well, now you're not taking goalies again. So I really is dependent. Like, there's no way to, I don't go into any of these thinking like, well, I need to take a center here and a wing. Like, that isn't the way to do this. The way to do this, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, is wherever you're selecting, try to get the maximum amount of value and correlate from there. It's probably the best way to put it, but without, you don't have to always select the best available, though. I mean, ADP is a very loose right now. I think it'd be a good term. There's not so many entries in there that have like made it so it's undoable to understand that some of these picks are just not correct. But also making sure, like you mentioned right off the cuff, like you should get correlations in there, because if you do have a chance for 5K, you're really going to limit yourself if you don't have the correct correlations to go with your stacks. So is there anything else you wanted to mention about strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I actually I was pulling up because I've done 1 draft to this point. So, for this year, obviously last year we did a handful, but Underdog actually wasn't legal in Pennsylvania last year. So this is sort of like my first foray into NHL best ball. I've been trying to bug the people at Underdog to get us like actual data from last year's contest. I have been fruitless in my endeavors to this point. So I'm hoping at some point in the near future to take a quick look through sort of like the data of the people who advanced, sort of their roster constructions and all of that. But before we do get started here, I think the sort of optimal is basically, when you're talking, there's 16 rounds. So you need to take centers, wings, defensemen, and goalies. I believe the framework that is most likely to be optimal is basically 3 centers, 6 wingers, 3 defensemen, and then either 2 or 3 goalies. And then that leaves you 1 or 2 spots to sort of shore up where you're weakest. So that's kind of what I assume the optimal strategy is. And the reason you want more wingers is because each week you get your best center, you get your best defenseman, you get your best goalie, you get your 2 best wingers. And that's why the wings, you just want to have more of them so that you can have more upside built in to your roster. That's really the simplest way to explain that. And I'm hoping to put some actual, raw data to the test and actually, see some evidence based on last year's contest. But without that, we're kind of flying a bit more blind than we would like. So just keep that in mind. And this could be updated, if we get our hands on some data in terms of what's optimal and what's not. So, this is something that I'm a bit almost ashamed to admit because, my stance on DFS, it's goalies don't matter. I hate goalie, take the cheapest goalie and just sort of pray. The 1 draft I've done so far, Connor Hellebuck was there at number 9, and I
Mm-hmm.
took him. So, I'm maybe indoctrinated. I'm fully indoctrinated into the goalies actually maybe matter in best ball. And that's just simply because the starts are so bankable for a guy like Hellebuck, a guy like Vasilevsky. You just need your goalie to start, and simply put, with, probably 20 teams at this point in the year, we don't really know if there's a goalie who's going to start, say, even 75% of their team's games. Most teams seem to be going to a 50-50 split. So if you're taking some late round goalies, I would suggest getting 3. I felt like I could get away with 2 because basically if Connor Hellebuck fails, my season's probably, this team's not making it anyway. And then I picked up Carter Hart in the later rounds because he was one of the last starting goalies on the board. And that just seems wrong. We'll talk about things as we get, through the ADP and actually talk about the draft. But Philly should be perfectly fine this year. Carter Hart should be their number 1 goalie all season, unless he has another awful year like he did last year. But simply put, I just don't buy it. So, there's our goalie talk. We'll obviously have some more as we go on, but that is sort of the first thing that I noticed looking through the previous draft that I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think you laid it out nicely, and kind of looking through some of the position ranks, which they just all sort by ADP, which, like I said, isn't perfect. I was kind of like, oh my God, Darcy Kempfer's the 4th goalie getting selected, and then I was like, oh yeah, he got traded to Colorado.
Yeah, right.
It's so weird. Yeah, like I knew that as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, like duh, obviously. But it is interesting to see how people are drafting early on. So yeah, as of right now at recording, there's gonna be 2,800 total entries. You divide that by 12, so like one team per, like you can have 1 per 12 entries. That whatever I'm saying is stupid. You can have 84 total entries. There we go. That's a better way of putting everything.
Yeah.
Hopefully this thing fills, but right now there's 263 entries in total. So the ADPs are whack, but that's fine.
Yeah. So
if you I was going to mention what I'm sorry. One last thing is if you can't maybe find a lot of time to sit down and wait for a draft to start and all that stuff, there's always the 8-hour per pick drafts, and there's enough time right now to get in a couple of those. If you're someone that just doesn't want to sit down and do all of this at once, you can just be in a lobby that's going to go on for like a week. I did one for football. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but some people love it. Matt, sorry, what were we going to say?
Damn, I was listening to. So DJ, is your default rankings the underdog default right now? Like you haven't made any updates to your
I
rankings
didn't make any
list,
updates.
right?
I didn't do anything.
So one thing to keep in mind is that based on my sort of like review of the default rankings, it does not seem like injuries are taken into account. In it actually might be in the projection, which is kind of weird, but like the ADP just doesn't, or like the default rankings, I don't think reflect that. Like, where's Jack Eichel for you? Is he at 58.5 or is he up higher? Because as of a few days ago, he was up higher for me.
58.5. He's dropping.
Okay, so I guess that is sort of reacting. But
I mean,
there is
not playing game 1. Like,
yeah, there is like basically no there's no confirmation that Jack Eichel will even touch the ice this season because the surgery that he has been like basically fighting the Sabres over, he's not had it yet. He's not had the alternative surgery. So, if we're assuming he needs surgery to play hockey again, he's still a ways away. So that's one area that I think is very important that you don't get sort of left out. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't need to get into that saga, but hopefully,
right.
for everyone involved, it reaches a good end. But no, definitely keep those things in mind. I mean, one thing is that I mentioned is like if a player is retired, like you're just SOL. And some people that have played basketball know probably what I mean by that. There's no ads, there's no drops, there's no trades. So whoever you take is who you take. So if Jack Eichel doesn't play, it's not like you could be like, oh, like we're gonna pick up a new guy and like nope, this is your team, and you just took Jack Eichel at 58 when you could have probably gotten like Elias Pettersson or someone else there that is going to barring an injury play every game. So that is another thing. And just to kind of reiterate, the whole point of best ball is that your roster gets set for you. So every single week, your best roster scores points. So that's, kind of just the easy way of describing it. So that's why, like, if you take McDavid number one, he's probably going to be mainly locked into your center spot. You don't really have to worry about that quite as much as the wing and defense now, and goaltenders for that matter. So you're going to want to, prioritize that a bit more, without ignoring it, because, teams take weeks off at a time and etc. So, everyone gets the point.
Yeah. And just sort of one other thought on the injuries, just because, Eichel's not the only guy who we sort of know is not going to play the full year. And just sort of keep this in mind. It's obviously going to be somewhat present in the rankings and stuff, but like I'm noticing Sidney Crosby's doesn't seem to be adjusted. Like he's still at 18.5 ADP. He seems like he is going to be out through, I think it's like October. Like he might not come back until November. And it's not that big a deal. Like obviously Crosby's, Sidney Crosby. But Evgeny Malkin is also out to start the year. They obviously lost Jared McCann. So like Pittsburgh might be in real tough shape for the first couple months.
Who are their centers? Like,
right. I actually don't really know. It's sort of concerning, but sort of that makes me think, a guy like Jake Gensel leaving, it's just really tough for them to hold value, especially if, the power play is not going and all of that. So those two guys are important. Obviously, Eichel, who we covered, Shea Weber's injury has been pretty well reported. Like he's almost, he's going to miss the year. So that's a big boost to a guy like Jeff Petrie, because that's a guaranteed power play one job. Maybe like a guy like Romanov gets a slight bump, but I don't think you get to his level in this.
You know who their number one center is in Pittsburgh?
Jeez.
I mean, like, it's not confirmed or anything, but
is Aston Reese plays the wing. I
mean,
gosh, I do not know.
A couple sites. Jeff Carter.
Wow. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Spots. Yeah, he's there.
Jeff Carter. Okay.
Oh, are we starting?
Yeah, looks like we're starting. And just finishing that thought, Jonathan Toews should be back. He had his whole situation. He seems like he'll be back for camp. And then Yanni Gourde in Seattle will actually be out, I think through October as well. He had some leg surgery, and he's probably going to play a big role there, but it might not, happen. So anyway, the draft is about to start. So thank you everybody for sort of, hanging out with us while we were waiting. I got the 6th pick. DJ, you are at number 9. Yep. I recognize Eagles. So did you reach out to him?
Yeah, I reached out to him to join. Okay. So thanks for jumping in. I know he said he might be on auto draft for at least a little while. So
interesting. Yeah, he's one of the guys who's in every draft. I think he maxed out like each of the puppies on Underdog. Just one of those insane dudes who's just always drafting. We got Justin JT Mack. He's picking 3rd. We have Paul P. Peterson 614. He's picking 7th. I don't recognize these other names, but obviously if you were in this draft, just feel free to reach out. Let us know what your Underdog name is, because, we're happy that you joined us if you joined on our behalf. All right. So at the first pick, it's almost certainly going to be McDavid. The first 4, I think, are pretty much set in stone between McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, Draisaitl. Definitely the first 3 seem set in stone. And then I'm guessing Draisaitl goes pretty regularly there. Interestingly, Kachuk slides up because hits are a stat here. But yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on the top 3? Like, obviously they're all very good, but do you think McDavid's the correct number 1 pick?
Yeah, sorry, I just got my video recording. It would not work, and I just got it on. So we're gonna hopefully just figure out the beginning audio. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that the 1, 2, 3 is well, I mean, McKinnon just went 3rd in ours, but yeah, I think that Draisaitl probably makes more sense at the 3. He goes 4. It's moving pretty quickly. So to start it off, McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, like I said, a little bit of a surprise, but not too crazy. Draisaitl, and then Pasternak, which, yeah, I mean, I could see the narrative for Pasternak getting there, but you're on the clock now.
Yeah, no, I'm on
But
the
yeah,
clock.
I think I think McKinnon over. I think McKinnon at 4 is fine. Well, but what are your thoughts here at 5? Yeah, 15. By the way, 30-second per pick is what we're doing, so it's going to move quickly. We're going to do our best to try to keep you in the loop.
Yeah, I mean,
Ovechkin. Oh, of course you take Ovechkin,
yeah,
and
at
then
6,
friend of the
at
podcast, Paul.
6. At 6, I just had to take Ovi. In consideration is Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah.
But
He's not going to get to me.
I get it, but I just don't think Kachuk has the sort of 50 goal upside that Ovechkin obviously has. So
Right,
Paul
yep.
takes Kucherov. That's cool. DJ, who you hoping for here?
I'm hoping for Brady. I mean, hits are scored. Like he kind of does everything. Shots, hits. He's really a full package. I know last year we kind of talked about him and some other guys. It's like hits are not always a stat that matters in fantasy, especially in a lot of leagues. They just turn them off. And I think if it's not Brady, like I might just grab Barkov. Honestly, I think Florida's real strong. Reinhart joining that team I think helps. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna grab Barkov. Hopefully,
Interesting.
I can get more.
So I'll let you talk it out.
It's okay. No, I'm just thinking. What were you gonna say?
Okay. Well, we'll update everyone on your pick after you make it.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Why not? Barkov. I think last year, if it's not a fluke, he could be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, so my rankings are based off of the projections supplied by The Athletic. Dom Lashishin posts basically his full, basically a full spreadsheet that has customizable scoring. So I just was able to put in the underdog scoring. I've been tweaking some stuff, basically, he gives us standard deviations too. So I've been playing around with what if I just assume, the upside case where a guy is, everyone's 2 standard deviations above, sort of looking for guys who maybe pop in that regard. And I just don't think that Brady's upside is, commensurate to any of the guys who honestly went before him, Pasternak, Ovechkin, Kucherov at the wing position. Ovechkin could be subject to some father time stuff, but also the guy's basically never been injured in his career. He had some struggles last year, but frankly, I would need to see it for multiple years before I sort of start banking on Ovechkin missing games. So I feel really confident in Ovechkin's just, a bankable production week to week, and that he's going to be one of my wings scoring pretty much every week this year because of his power play production, because of how reliably elite he is at scoring goals. So
yeah, I think that's fair. Well, while you were talking, like I said, I took Barkov, which I don't know. I think there's a case we made for a lot of guys. But then Marchand, Patrick Kane, Roman Josi, Vasilevsky, Panarin, Marner, and now I am on the clock. I mean, I feel like I just got to take Hellebuck. I mean, just lock that down. Seems to be the right move here.
Yeah, I think that's good. What I was gonna say is that basically right now I just have it sorted simply by the value above replacement player. So I think that needs tweaked because I need to assume the replacement player is a bit higher scoring, I believe, because these rosters I think are smaller than sort of the standard fantasy replacement level. So I have a lot of defensemen at the top, which is actually kind of problematic because, I don't want to be drafting guys well above ADP. Like Dougie Hamilton is the 7th best player based on these rankings. And I think that's right. But if I can get him in the 2nd, 3rd round consistently, why would I reach, So
yeah, definitely.
That's sort of the conundrum I find myself in with these rankings. Anyway, I am on the clock.
Yep.
Rantanen just went. Benachet went.
Yeah. I think Rantanen, him and Hellebuck were the 2 I was really between because I think they're just a bit above the rest.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you can make a strong case for Cale Makar here. I think, really, Patrick is probably fine. I mean, I'm putting together my Florida stack, so I don't think Huberdeau's going to be there, but that's okay. He doesn't correlate perfectly with Barkov.
Yeah, anyways, it would not be the first podcast draft of the year if I didn't start off my draft with Max Pacioretty and Alex Ovechkin. Come on,
it was a must take. It wasn't even really. It was never a doubt.
Yeah, those are just my 2 guys. Obviously, this means that my wing position should be set. like I shouldn't be jamming in, like 7 wings or anything, because, if my team's going to win, I'm going to need these guys to be good, because they'll be passed by teams who have, McDavid, who's going to outscore these guys by 1 billion if they have a down year. So, like, I'm not making it to the money anyway. So I might as well say, hey, these guys have a good year. Now let me load up on some center depth, some defense depth, and obviously some goalies. So that's where I'm at.
I have just a center and a goalie. So I'm really hoping to get a defenseman that I really like at pick 33, but we're gonna wait and see right now. I mean, we just after you went had Cale McCargo 1 pick after, which I think is about right. I think he should go about there to Brinkett and then Aho. And we are back to Eagles, who is on auto draft right now. So let's see what his auto draft.
No, I don't know. I don't think he is. That's his experience badge, not auto draft.
Oh. Well, he told me he was maybe going to be on auto draft, so maybe he is, maybe he isn't.
Maybe he is. It just hasn't turned on yet or something.
Matthews and Crosby, so he is all about the centers.
Yeah. So JT Mack, Justin picked up Sebastian Aho. That's the other guy I was considering at my spot. I really, not necessarily because I think Aho's like a smash value, but because I think Svechnikov is an unbelievable value if he's really going, 28th in terms of ADP. I think he has all the upside in the world in terms of shots, in terms of hits. Like, he literally does it all. I think he might honestly be better than Brady. And obviously that's, super hot take, but so anyway, picking up that Carolina stack is something that I think I would like to do. If I'm drafting 20 times, I'm hoping to be over the field on, Svechnikov and stacking around him, because, Dougie's gone. There's more shots for Svechnikov to pick up on the power play. And he's going to shoot. So I'm all about that.
I think that's fine. We still got Dougie on the board right now, which is, I'm not gonna, I think Darnell Nurse is a really, really nice play, but I could not justify taking him over Dougie Hamilton.
Never.
But
never,
that is the rankings right now. I think he is. Obviously, I think they're kind of assuming like Clefbaum's still out. He really picked it up at the end of the year. Some people might just be. I think what I was gonna say is more is people that take McDavid 1 might just grab him at the turn. The end of round 2, start of round 3 turn. They might just be like, well, let me grab his top defenseman, because obviously they're not getting Draisaitl. So that might be part of the plan with that.
Yeah, that could be, and that's kind of interesting. I just feel like we already saw the ceiling on Darnell Nurse, and so you're not Tyson Barrie goes 75th, and I get that the other stats are important, hits or whatever, but I don't know. I don't see it personally.
You're on the clock now.
I am on the clock.
To you here. You just grab me Darnell Nurse. I mean,
yeah, it. All right, so I think I'm gonna grab my first goalie. I'm gonna grab Robin Lehner. Okay. Marc-Andre Fleury's gone, so Leonard's gonna have to pick up a bunch of starts, and that's sort of, he also goes well with Pacioretty. So later on in the draft, if I want to pick up, say William Karlsson or Jonathan Marchessault, or a defenseman like Theodore or Pietrangelo, I have a nice little stack where it's like, if Vegas does really well those 3 weeks of the playoffs, I get goalie wins, I get goals from Pacioretty, and I'll get whatever production, from the other Vegas guys I pick up.
Was hoping Kyle Connor would get to me because I have Hellebuck in net, but that wasn't going to be the case. So is what it is. We'll move on. I mean, I could take Scheifele, but that just seems way too early, so I'm not going to do that. I'm honestly thinking about just grabbing Adam Fox. I mean, he's pretty big good, but then again, Chychrun too.
Chychrun seems like in all categories monster.
I might. Let's see what this guy does first. It's between the two.
Nurse, of course.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna grab Chychrun. Yeah, I'm gonna grab Chychrun. Yeah, he really does it all. Let's do that. I'm not gonna get a ton of Arizona guys, but I don't mind grabbing Chychrun, I guess. I'm not gonna be stacking up too much, which is kind of maybe why he slips a little bit further than he should, because he was so incredibly good last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's interesting is that Underdog doesn't have 2020 stats in their player cards, so like you can't even really like look at that in terms of like when you're drafting, you're on the clock. So like people probably like obviously I'm guessing anyone who's like doing an NHL best ball draft is pretty hardcore into NHL. Like I don't know how much casual crossover there is from just people like randomly clicking names. Um, Maybe that happens, but like I think Chikrin, even with like some invested observers, just goes under the radar because with Arizona. But he was so good last year. I think we talked about in our last podcast, which was like a month ago now, how Chikrin could easily be the number one fantasy defenseman this year.
Yeah, right.
Um,
That's kind of my thinking. I mean, it is to me. It's like this guy was shooting the puck more than like Ovechkin. Like
mhm.
I mean, Arizona obviously didn't make the playoffs, but this guy was had like 8 shots on goal, and that was like just every game. It was crazy. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty high on him, and I mean, I took him. I didn't know if anyone was going to grab him from me, but if Adam Fox makes it next, I might just lock down those 2 deep spots and move on. I think defense. Actually, why even do that? There's no point. Right? Wait, hold on. I'm trying to think. What is the? Do you have 2 defensemen that start? Or only one?
You get
Just
one
one.
defenseman each week, and you also get a
Yeah.
flex. So
Yeah.
it's not like I don't
I
think
have
it's the
no
end of the
wingers.
world.
Yeah, I
Um,
could do it, but yeah, I don't know if I don't know. It's kind of
so
between.
the other draft I did, and obviously I'm still working on some strategy and process and stuff, but I took Chikrin at 33, and then I took Shea Theodore at 57. So that
Yeah,
was, and
that's
then I grabbed Wierenski pretty late.
yeah,
So
Fox goes one before me anyways. I mean,
uh,
I really think that this is a perfect spot to grab between a few guys. I think like Gensel, like you talked about, is in a really good spot, but I'm gonna grab Ellers instead. He fits with the goalie better. He is a shot monster. He really came on strong last year before he got hurt for a while and back and forth. And the one problem with Ellers was always the power play usage, but really hope Winnipeg figures that out for him and puts him in the right spot. And there's no line anymore. He wasn't there last year anyways, but I really like Nikolaj Ellers. I think he is like an analytic darling as well as a shot monster. I don't think he's going to have a ton of hits for me, but that's okay. But yeah, I think that's the right take there. So then, like I said, correlates well with the goalie. So if he goes off for a couple hat tricks like I need him to in the playoffs, then I'm really hopeful to have the winning goalie as well because Pellebuck's going to get a ton of starts.
yeah, and so Gensel goes run at one after you.
Yeah,
Um, I have John Carlson on the board here, unless Paul takes him. So that seems to me like a real easy fit. Match made in heaven with Ovi. Um, yep, he made it to me. So
yep. He took
ADP of
Landeskog.
yep,
4
ADP of
wingers.
yeah, ADP of 35 and a half fell to me at 43. I will take that. Um, and this like not to pat myself on the back, it happened one freaking time, but like getting guys past ADP who do correlate with your current roster is such a plus EV way to go about best ball. Like you read about it in NFL best ball about like how that's how like you look at the data and that's how tournaments are actually won. It's not like reaching above ADP where basically, yeah, you have the stack, but because you reached on it, other people have that same stack and they have better players around them. Um, Basically, for me, it's like I got him where people are taking quote unquote worst players by ADP. So
Yeah,
John Carlson, Ovi just make for a real nice stack, and certainly happy with that. So
yeah.
coming
I
together
like that a
nicely
lot.
so far. So DJ, what's your start right now?
Yeah, my start is Barkov, Ellers, Chikrin, and Hellebuck, and I feel very good about that.
So you have one of each position.
I have one of each position, which was not planned. I don't think it's a bad strategy, but I wouldn't force it. I just think it kind of worked out that way where, the defense that I wanted fell to me at 33, and then I was like, well, there was, between a few wingers I thought were probably the best values, and I just went with the correlation, which I'm not mad about. I don't think you have to force correlation. Like it's important to have, but like you were saying, don't take a guy 15 picks above ADP because you think like, well, I really want to make sure I get this correlation. Like it isn't 100% necessary. It's a lot better to get the guy to fall to you into that correlation. than it is to reach way out of your way to get it.
Yeah, agreed for sure. So what do we have on the board here?
Yep. After you went to Carlson, Drew Doughty went, which feels a little bit early. He's ADP 138.5. Someone grabbed him at 44. Not what I would have suggested, but to each their own. After that, Seth Jones, right around his ADP, a little bit early, but they had to brink it already. So you can kind of see he's building like a Draisaitl to brink it, Svechnikov, Jones. A lot of good shooters there. So I do like what he's built. Then Justin took Mark Stone, which doesn't go with anyone he has, but that's okay. McKinnon, Aho, Stone, and Hamilton. I mean, still getting some nice stuff. Kemper, Marchessault, and Wheeler after that. I'm not super high on Blake Wheeler, so.
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting one for me.
And like that, he picked up right at ADP. I mean, not where I'd rank him, but sure, like that's fine.
Yeah. Let's see. I actually just pulled last year's stats from Natural Stat Trick, so I can basically apply the underdog scoring and sort of get some, general rankings on where these players fell in. Obviously, the full season output is not quite as indicative of, like success, because it's all about the upside weeks that you have, like if you score 40 points in a week, it doesn't matter if you scored 80 points all year, those 40 points are going right into your team. So, it's not going to be that revelatory, but I do think it'll be some interesting, like talking points as we go through the draft. All right. So I am back on the clock. I currently have no centers. Don't love that. So what I'm going to do with this pick is I'm going to grab Matthew Barzal. He doesn't necessarily check the boxes of being, a shot taker or anything like that, but we saw a side of Barzal in the playoffs this past season that I just don't think I had seen from him in years past. So I'm hoping that he sort of maybe can have the reins fully taken off of him going into this season. The Islanders are kind of odds-on favorites to win their division, which is not something I would have expected, but they just had a really good, solid year last year. So I expect big things out of Barzal this year, and I think he has a lot of untapped upside. Right after me goes Jack Eichel. Don't know how I feel about that, Paul, but hoping for your sake he comes back and lights it up for Buffalo. DJ, you're up in one pick. So any guys you're looking at?
Wow, honestly, I am struggling right now. I'm like going through all the positions. I really like UC Soros a lot. Like I don't think Nashville is absolutely dust, but well, he goes anyways. One pick before me,
Wow.
but I don't need a goalie, so it's just kind of like tough. I'm not taking Markstrom. I don't mind Philippe Forsberg here either. He seems fine. Fiala, Rust, but I'm honestly sitting here. You know what? I am going to do almost exactly what you did, but I'm going to take Pietrangelo. I'm going to take Alex Pietrangelo instead of Shea Theodore. They're both right next to each other. Is that foolish? Is that foolish?
No, I mean we saw Pietrangelo pick up a ton of like just floor related sort of points in the playoffs last year. So if you can keep that up, by all means, I think he's a great selection as well. I just am sort of the mindset that Shea Theodore is going to be the top power play guy, and that's just sort of my almost tiebreaker of sorts. But definitely do think that Pietrangelo might have a more bankable output from week to week.
I think that it's I think Theodore might have the bigger upside in the playoffs type situation, but I think both of them are just fantastic grabs here. And looking at the defenseman coming up, and someone just took Quinn Hughes, who was a little bit higher than him ADP wise, but I just didn't want to do it. It's Theodore, Letang, Burns, Barry. What are we even doing? I'm not taking any of those other guys except for Theodore there. So I think the defense, because basically what I'm getting at, defense kind of drops off, I think, a bit after this. So I'd rather get my second guy now. That's somewhat of my strategy anyways, is to take a couple defensemen early, because I think there's just more meat on the bone with wing and center.
Yeah. So So here's the sort of conundrum that I find myself in. And like, I don't really know even if I should say this, given, you're drafting in this with me. But when you look at my board, like based on the rankings from the Athletic, or, the stat projections from the Athletic, Evander Kane is the top forward remaining for me. And you see, that's problematic because his ADP is like in the 159 range, like literally almost in the last round. Part of that is
trouble. Yeah.
Part of that is due to legal trouble around him. Part of that is due to the gambling investigation, which, frankly, I think if we haven't heard anything yet, it's unsubstantiated, or they at least can't find, like concrete evidence. But like you look at last year, the guy was 12th in just overall underdog points, like for fantasy purposes. Like he is an absolute beast in this format. And that's sort of where I'm like, do I just take him at like pick 90 or pick 100? Because, simply put, I think he's better than all of the other guys available at that point. Like maybe. But like, I think he's like the most like flash point, or like, it's one of the key decisions, I think, as you get to the later stages of the draft, like what your stance is on him, because I truly believe that he is the sort of guy who is a league winner. And, is the upside worth the potential downside of, a guy being suspended, or it's like literally like in jail or something. Like, there's just a lot of uncertainty around him. And I find that to be really interesting and compelling as we approach the season. So,
right. So yeah, I just had to pick while you were talking. I went with Forsberg. I got him 10 after ADP. A couple of reasons why I might like him a little bit more than the rest. I mean, they traded Arvidsson in the offseason, who stole some shots from him, but also was, you could consider him like valuable to have with Forsberg, as they seem to do well together. So that could hurt him, could help him, but I'm just going to bet on it, hopefully helping him. And on top of that, it's a contract year for him. It does seem like he might be, potentially moving on. So decided maybe in a contract year he could really. Mac, tell us why.
All right, yeah, you cut out on me, DJ, but I'm guessing you had finished your thought and then you'd commented on the fact that I selected Tyson Barrie. So,
correct.
Yeah, I picked Tyson Barrie at pick 67. His ADP is 75, but I'm looking at the board, and like Brian Rust, I don't necessarily think he repeats that. He's slipped a bit past ADP at this point. Sean Couturier is there past ADP, and it's right about Semyon Varlamov's ADP. I just don't think any of those guys have the same upside that Barrie does. I think that, in the weeks where John Carlson's not like putting up his, reasonably consistent scoring, let's say, I think that Tyson Barrie, with his power play role, like if that power play has a hot week, I think he could be easily the number one scoring defenseman in all of fantasy. And I certainly think that he could be a guy who is very useful on this team, even without, a McDavid or Draisaitl on my roster. So that's why I went with Tyson Barrie. It's just, I think the spot is just so perfect, playing alongside McDavid. He was the 40th best player by Underdog stats in last season. So getting him at 70 without any appreciable role change or anything, I think is just a boon for me. So that's why I like Tyson Barrie, and I'll probably be pretty heavy on him as we get into best ball season.
All right, very nice. We had a bunch of other players taken. Any shockers there? I don't think there's anyone that's. I mean, Demko,
no,
kind of, but not even really. I mean, he's a little bit above ADP, but he went, before like Varlamov and stuff like that.
Yeah, so forgive me, I might just be an idiot, but Holtby's gone. Who's the backup now in Vancouver?
Wow, who is their backup? Can you?
Okay, so it's not obvious. Yeah. Okay.
No, not really. I mean, I'm just trying to sort Halak, I guess.
Oh, wow. I literally don't think I could have told you that.
I knew he was not in Boston, but
yeah, I remember that.
I really didn't know he was there either. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so one other thing is on Underdog, a little little trick, I guess, maybe. If you are trying to find a specific team in the search, if you like type in the team name, it'll pop up.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
do like
yeah,
that a
just
lot. It's
little,
really,
little trick. So if you're like, man, I really want to get another guy from Florida, like I took Barkov, so I'm kind of thinking, who should I get with him? You just type in FLA, and then they'll pop up.
yeah. So like you were saying about Eagles, he does seem to be on auto draft because so far to start, he's gotten 4 centers
Yeah,
and 2 goalies. My assumption is that he set his like roster constraints or whatever in his rankings tab to have 4 centers, and he just so happened to grab, the top guy on the board was just a center each time he got up. So a bit unfortunate there on his behalf, but it is kind of funny to see that play out.
yeah.
Um,
So you're up right now. You're on the clock here.
I
You're
am.
you're at a 1-2-2-1 center wing defense goalie. So nice spread. I had the same build right now, in case anyone was keeping score at home.
Yeah. All right. So the clock ran, and I was looking for alternatives, but I grabbed Mike Smith. I get it. He's old. Like I don't necessarily love the idea of an old guy like Mike Smith being, a quote unquote like workhorse, but Koskinen hasn't been it for Edmonton. Mike Smith had a reasonably solid year last year, and Edmonton should be good. So, I think he picks up some wins along the way, and I feel pretty good about going into the season with Robin Leonard and Mike Smith in goal. And then I can use the extra roster spot to shore up, say, the center position or something like that if I feel that I am relatively weak at a different position rather than feeling the need to grab a third goalie. So, DJ, you're on the clock. Let's see what you come up with.
I'm taking Vinny Trocheck here. I want a little bit more correlation, but I mean, I really think that Dougie Hamilton's shots could also find his stick. He was a huge shot producer in Florida, and we haven't seen a ton of it in Carolina. He had some stretches in there that worked out real well, but I really think that he could pick up the slack a little bit more this year and find a way to shoot more. Any thoughts on that?
No, I actually wound up with Chochek in my first draft. I think that, maybe not in 2 years because it does seem like Trocheck as a UFA after this year is likely to be just, they probably can't afford him. But we'll see. And I think for this year, especially, like Trocheck will be surrounded by insanely talented players. He should get some of that top power play work, at least to start. And yeah, like you were saying, he certainly fits the mold of a guy with, really high upside.
I just realized they don't have Seattle, like they have the players, but like they don't have the name.
The right, they don't have like the abbreviation attached
Yeah,
to
they don't.
them or
Like, yeah, I just
whatever.
like saw
Yeah.
like what I was like Grubauer just he's on a team. I'm like, why? Yeah, it's
Yep.
funny. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Mark Giordano is like at the toward the top of my list right now, and
Yeah.
I find that really interesting because like
I know.
is that going to be sustainable? Like, can Mark
Oh man, there
Giordano?
goes my guy. I was gonna take Group A
Oh wow.
hands. Group
Yeah.
A hands was my pick there. Darn. Okay, let's. I just didn't think he was gonna go, and now I'm on the clock. Stutzla went right before me. Um, do I just take the other Dallas guy? I mean, that's man, and Shabbat's right there too. Jesus. I'm gonna take Shabbat. Why the heck is he still there? That just doesn't seem right. That locks up defense. I'm pretty sure for good for me. Three defensemen. That's
Yeah.
probably enough.
Yeah. No,
That's yeah.
I
Just
like your
done with
stable there
defense
though.
now. Yeah, that. Oh my god, he just feels like I would take Shabbat over a lot of guys that have already been taken. Um, like
Yeah. So
definitely
now,
Perrons
well,
and freaking yeah.
go ahead and okay. So
That's it.
my thoughts here coming up to my pick. There's 30 seconds before I'm on the clock. Is between Zach Hyman and
Yep.
where the heck did he go? Timo Meyer. And for Timo, he's the guy who obviously I freaking adore, because everyone who follows like analytics and stuff just loves Timo. Um, But as Timo has grown, like in the NHL, he just hasn't really gotten the power play work that you would hope for. And Paul makes it easy for me by taking him anyway. So I feel really good about taking Zach Hyman here. One, it's right at ADP, so it's not like I'm taking a huge stand, but like Zach Hyman was brought in to play alongside Connor McDavid. I truly believe that. I know for a fact that they don't want to put Draisaitl with McDavid because, you know, they're obviously any team's better if they're spreading their depth through the lineup. And I also think that Zach Hyman has power play one potential here. Like the Oilers have been looking for a net front guy like for forever. Like they played Alex Chason there for God's sake. And Zach Hyman, I think, is going to be the net front guy on their power play. Meaning, I just grabbed Tyson Barrie and Zach Hyman in relatively quick order, along with Mike Smith, to sort of wrap up that Edmonton stack, all at pretty decent ADP. You know, like you were saying, ADP is not necessarily set in stone. It's not necessarily sharp at this point, and it might honestly never be because there's just so few drafts relative to like the football market for the ADPs to actually stabilize. But yeah, so I feel really good about that, and it has a sort of correlation that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a good pick. After you went and took Hyman, Jacob Perron went, probably maybe the best player in Detroit is for all besides Larkin, but he's the first to go. Binnington, Taylor Hall, Mike Riley, and we're at the turn. So the guy that picked last turn, he takes Sam Reinhart, who I was considering, but I just don't really think he's going to correlate very well with Barkov. He already has Huberdeau, so I think it made a lot of sense for him. That might be what they end up doing there on line 2. So I like that take there.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what Florida does because it does feel like they might have the best third line in hockey if no one gets hurt or whatever. Because I mean, if you just think about it, they have they brought in Reinhardt, obviously. They have Bennett, who they brought in late last year. They have Huberdeau, so maybe that's the second line. They have the first line of Barkov for Hagee and maybe Duclair. Maybe that's where Reinhardt goes. So outside of the top 6, like I haven't even mentioned Patrick Hornqvist. So like they have a really sort of loaded depth in their top 9 forwards. And frankly, I could see Reinhardt being a third line center. I could see him playing where Duclair played last year for the most part, where for Hagee and Barkov. Like I truly do not know. And so I'll probably try to get some Reinhardt, but maybe sort of like this, where he falls to the late 90s rather than the early 90s.
Right. Yeah. So right now the top player ADP wise is Jason Robertson. That feels like a real nice little take if he's still there. I mean, I have 5 picks away, but I don't really understand why he's slipping this far. There's, looking at the wing position, the only other guy that I think it's a little bit interesting is kind of Toffoli with how good he was last year. To think they lost players, like he's still gonna have a huge role in Montreal. If Robertson goes right there, I still really have a lot of.
Yeah.
I have no correlation right now, which is bothering me. But
Aaron Ekblad went, which is
that would have been the take I should have had. Yeah.
Um,
I regret. I took Shabbat and I was like, I should have waited and took an Ekblad, but you live and you learn.
All right, so
you're up.
Let's see. I am going to get Bo Horvat here. Basically just an ADP pick. I don't have a strong take here, and I do want to get a few more centers onto my roster because I feel really good about my goalies. Like I said, I feel good about defense with Carlson and Barrie. I have Ovechkin patches, and I also have Hyman. So with just Barzell in the tank, I think I wanted a center. And looking at the options, I think, Horvat was toward the top of the projections, and I'm just not a Larkin truther. So that was sort of it for me. All right, DJ, you are 1 pick away. Who are you targeting here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really down to a couple guys. I Cam Talbot's the top goalie available, and I really think he is the a legit starter for Minnesota. It's just how good is Minnesota going to be? After that, in the ADP order, it's Matt Murray, Grubauer, Campbell, Hart. I just really think he is a little bit far and above the rest of these guys, except for maybe Grubauer. But I do think I'd rather take a guy like Cam Talbot here, and just shore up the Hellebuck Talbot too, and then I don't have to worry about goalie anymore.
Yep.
Just because I think he's like the drop off after him, besides Grubauer, who I do have a lot of time for, I think it is pretty steep.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I was debating him, but obviously I have my two goalies, so I wasn't
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah.
reach on a second guy.
Yeah, I'm up again in 5. Miro Heiskanen just goes, I'm really between two guys, and you know what? Maybe you can give me some advice here. You know what? Let's take a quick look at everyone available just to make sure. I mean, Hurdle's still there too, which I don't think is a terrible take. Um, but I'm really thinking Toffoli or Jack Hughes.
Nope.
I think
Yep.
Jack.
Sorry, I was. Anyway, between those two, I think Jack Hughes is a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
I think
they're both.
Toffoli's role is heavily subject to Cole Caulfield. And like, yeah, I believe they played on the same line last year until,
Yeah, for a
until they
while.
sort of got jumbled in the Stanley Cup final. So maybe that's a
Oh,
benefactor
there
for
goes Toffoli,
Toffoli.
anyways.
And there he goes anyway.
Yeah, right.
But the power play role that Toffoli plays, like, I don't know how reliable that is. I don't know how their power play is going to be structured. But I do worry that Toffoli is sort of like hit his peak last year, and then it's going to be tough sledding from
Oh
there.
my God! And they both go. Jack Hughes one before me. Well, who do I pivot to? That's the question on everyone's mind. Um,
Yeah. So while
I
you,
think you know what? I'm just gonna take Pavel Pustevich. Um, I think
yeah,
that I don't think Tarasenko is gonna stay there is the best way to put it, and I think Pustevich is gonna he could be the guy that you get at 112 that next year is going at 50 50 51, like young player, really really good. Never really got the run in New York that I think he deserved, and everyone that follows analytics is like, what the heck is going on? Like, why is he not playing more? So
yeah. What's really interesting about that is I was actually targeting his teammate for my next pick, David Perron.
yeah, I like him too.
And yeah, it's sort of like we've seen it from Perron, which I think that's why his ADP is a bit higher as well. So it's not that
And there he goes.
surprising. And there he goes. Okay.
Yep.
Um, all right. So I am now on the clock. Uh, hmm.
I mean, Backstrom's there if you want to just get freaking crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Man, that does not feel good.
It doesn't sound like you want to get that crazy.
No, I do not. I'm just gonna take Bjorkstrand.
The golden child.
He's slipped a bit. He's like, there's actually a bunch of guys ahead of him on like my little rankings. Um, like, but they're all like way deeper in ADP. So I'll just sort of wait and see.
I just can't believe you didn't take Pulak. He was right there for you.
The Noah Dobson thing just
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just it's okay. You're a fraud. You mentioned it right at the top. So
no, I get it, but like yes, Polak is probably gonna like get hits and get blocks or whatever. But the fact that like he's getting yanked around on the power play all the time, it doesn't seem like a guy who I want to be investing on like before like the late rounds rather than like in these mid rounds that we're in. Like I just feel much more confident in honestly a bunch of other players to be like the go-to offensive guys on their team, and that's sort of what I'm targeting here. Still, I'm targeting that upside rather than the stability and the floors and all of that. So that's why. Because I had the same thought last time out too. I didn't take any Islanders, but I was staring at Polak, just going like, yeah, I love him, but I just don't know if I can invest on him for a full year without knowing how Trotz is going to deploy him.
Eagles just took my next pick. I had Marty Nachos for the Trocheck action.
Mm.
Oh well. The guy that just picked though, I think he has a real nice build of 4 centers, 5 wingers, and now 1 defenseman, no goalies. That is spicy, 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 spicy. he took Pulak though. But yeah, no. Oh boy, this is really where it's gonna get interesting. What are you thinking next? You're up next, I believe.
Yeah,
You got anything?
I pick before you.
Yep.
I think this is a good time to take a swing on Gino. Um,
Yeah, he's coming up. I was
I
thinking.
I have the sort of roster where I feel really good about my wings. I have two, I think, high end defensemen. I have two, should be starting goalies. And center, I think, is my weak position by far with Barzell and Horvat. So, there's a chance that Malkin is, like not functional, which obviously sucks. But also, if he does come back and is, Evgeny Malkin again, then I'll basically have a guy for the stretch run where I'm really trying to pick up points at the center position. And yeah, I think that Malkin makes the most sense for my build right now. Just looking at some of the other center options, like Joe Pavelski is there, Nick Backstrom, like you said, Braden Shen. Like none of that is all that interesting to me. And Brock Nelson just won't correlate with Barzell, so it's not like I'm that interested in that either. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
am
right,
going
that's where
to
I'm
pull the trigger.
struggling right now. Is I literally have like no correlations at all, and I don't love that. I'm trying to like figure out what like Shen would maybe work with boost damage, but we have no idea.
Yeah, no, we truly. So they did lose Jaden Schwartz, so it could just be a clear person in, person out replacement in terms of
Yeah.
putting Shen with Buchnevich. But yeah, certainly no guarantee there.
Well, I'm on the clock, and I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna take Shen. Don't feel fantastic about it, but if they do correlate, he's my third center. He could have a couple big weeks. I get him a bit after ADP, although I think he's definitely not quite where he should be at 123. But center gets pretty weak. Um, he was pretty serviceable last year. He has some pretty big times, so
All right, so
what
let's
was his?
see. Paul just picked. Let's take a look at Paul's teams. We started off with Kucherov, Rantanen, Connor, Landeskog, four wings. Okay, Jack Eichel, Shea Theodore, Sagan. So two. Well, I guess Sagan is not currently injured, but some injury flags there. I would say at center for him. Then he grabbed Timo ahead of me, like we talked about. I picked up John Gibson as his first goalie. That seems pretty strong to me. It's not overly likely that John Gibson is, a Vezina winner because his team is so bad in front of him, but he is a guy like with that upside for sure. So I don't hate that idea. And then its last two picks have been Zach Karensky, who I absolutely love here. Yeah, I was actually like looking at Bjorkstrand and Werenski like in tandem, but obviously didn't get that. But Werenski with Jones leaving, I think is just going to have a monster year. And then he grabbed Pierre-Luc Dubois, pretty ahead of ADP, but yeah, interesting little take there. So I guess to go with Kyle Connor, it makes a bit of sense if we think that Ellers will be on the top line and Connor slides down to line two. So
All up in two picks. I'm up in one pick. I'm between a couple guys here. I'm thinking either really Garland, Batherson, or Clayton Keller. Clayton Keller would be a bit above ADP, but just kind of getting the full Arizona usable players, I guess, stack. Batherson is a little bit earlier than maybe he should be here, but he would correlate well with Shabbat probably on the power play, and he's beast in his own right. And then Connor Garland, I don't have a correlating piece with him, but I think he's just not correct where he is at ADP right now. What do you think? What do you think I should do?
Batherson just got the new contract extension, right? I kind of
So.
I kind of think he's the
Yeah.
best guy from that list of players that you just mentioned.
Let's do it. Yeah, he's a shooter. Take I want to take him. There we go. Now he's on my team.
Yeah,
I picked him like 3 times.
now
It gives me a little more correlation. I actually just kind of like back-to-back picks, like I didn't again, like I didn't force correlation by like picking way above ADP, but I put the correlation together. A little bit of St. Louis, a little bit of Ottawa. Ottawa, I think they're a team that will score a lot of goals and give up a lot of goals, so they could be a fun team to have a little bit of a stack with.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm one pick away. Hopefully Paul does not take this guy, but I am dialing up Anders Lee to go with Matthew Barzal. I feel like that's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
They lost Eberle, right? Or no? Wait.
Yeah, they did. He went to Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. So obviously there's a bit of a question mark there, but maybe a guy like Wahlstrom slides up to that line or something. That would be really cool. But basically, we know that Anders Lee and Matthew Barzal are about as well correlated as it gets on this New York Islanders team. So I feel pretty good about that. ADP of 143. I'm at pick 139. So just,
Anders Lee was real good last year before he got hurt.
He was, yeah. I was actually a bit surprised. He didn't have like insane counting stats, honestly. Like he had 17 points in 26 games, which is definitely fine. But let's see. Anders Lee, 27 games. He had 12. Let's see. He had 12 goals, 7 points. He had 19 points in 27 games. And I just lost him.
How many? So 16 rounds. We're in round 3. Well, we're about to be on 13.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you this. All right, just kind of going through centers right now. There's a lot of guys that don't have an ADP number next to their name because they don't get picked maybe enough to get that yet. Which one are you thinking would be the best pick? Okay, now this might be based off of a bit of like how the scoring works, but maybe not. So I'm gonna name 3 names. So Sean Monahan's down here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, Jeff Carter, I mentioned before, could be starter in Pittsburgh, so he could be like a day 1 starter. And another one that doesn't seem to always get picked, Nico Hischier.
Yeah. So Nico Hischier does project the best of that group of all of the no EDPers right now. Has the best projection. I do think that Sean Monahan is fine. Jeff Carter is definitely the second guy on that list, though, for me. But a name who I think, like last round, is a really good guy to go after is Pavel Zacha, because we saw him dominate the power play for New Jersey last year. And if Jack Hughes is going to reach his full form, like he's going to be a great passer. And if Zacha is sort of well established as like their number 1 goal scorer on the power play, with Dougie in the fold, especially, like it feels like Pavel Zacha could have a monster year by just piling up goals. But I don't know, maybe that's a hot take or whatever, but we're definitely sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel here already in terms of centers. So I think that he's a real good upside option. Trevor Zegras as well doesn't have an EDP associated with him and is just like flat out awesome. So we'll see how fantasy relevant
Jonathan Taves is like one of the last picks.
Yeah.
That's almost doesn't seem right.
No, it doesn't. I've been sort of tossing that idea around too. It's like, with the year off, how should we value him? Like, what's his role look like? Like, is he even gonna play with Patrick Kane? Like, he didn't for a while.
You're up.
All right, I am on the clock here. I have 3 centers, 5 wings, 2 defense, 2 goalies. So looking at the board, I do see a lot of defensemen that I like.
Do it.
Yeah, you want me to take Darlene? I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. I can't justify taking him, and like he's got to go to a good home.
So technically, technically speaking, Spurgeon and Uyghur each had better projections. Uyghur obviously is just one of those guys who isn't likely to do it via the power play. Spurgeon could. No Suter in the mix. It's probably Spurgeon and Dumba on the power play, but I don't know. Spurgeon's fine. I just feel like Darlene has the sort of upside that we're looking for.
Well, I am now on the clock. I'm going to do it. I know everyone's thinking, is he going to do it? I'm going to take Jared McCann. I think he's kind of been the guy all along for Seattle that I like maybe the most from a fantasy perspective. I think that he has a ton of upside. He's going to have a ton of shots and a ton of opportunity, and it's directly at ADP. I'm not jumping up too high to get a guy that you know, and like if you, I think I'm kind of thinking like, could he be William Karlsson for this team? And like, I think that's reasonable. I wish he was at center where I think he's going to play, but they have him as a winger, which is a little bit frustrating, but. I'm okay with it. I have Barkov, Trocheck, and Shen, but my next pick here is going to be a center. So, spoiler alert. I mean, I'm planning on taking Kadri right now. Is my plan. That would be. I think he has a really good upside. Sometimes the top power play, and he's also just It seems like every once in a while he has like a 5-point night that'll just boost your lineup.
Yep.
So I'm gonna grab him.
Or,
He's there.
well, better put, he'll have a 5-point night that buries you in DFS.
Yeah, right. Because it's never when you play him.
Yeah.
If I played him 80 games out of 82, I know which games he's having.
He would have a 60-point season, and none of those points would come in the 80 games I play him.
Yes, exactly. And if he goes,
but actually, who are we kidding? He's never playing 82 games. He's going to get suspended.
Yeah, this is true. All right. Yep, I'm gonna grab him right here.
There goes Kadri.
And he hits. He does everything too. He does all of the things you want.
Yep.
So, did take him a little, and right after him, Tom Wilson, who definitely will get the hits.
Yeah. So right now I'm between Mike Hoffman in Montreal.
Yep,
the secondary reason I'm worried about Toffoli, Hoffman should be a power play guy. We'll see what they do. I just, we can't trust Montreal to do anything right, honestly. And then Evander Kane is just there.
Kirby Doc.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I love Mike Hoffman, but I was talking about Evander Kane and being reasonably selected in the 90s, 100s. I think his upside is just too immense to pass up, despite the investigations, despite all the off-ice stuff. On the ice, he is I think he's easily a top 50 fantasy asset. So getting him at pick 163 is just a slam dunk.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So he might be my highest owned guy when we get to the end of things because it just checks all the boxes for me.
So we have 2 rounds left.
Yep. 2 rounds to go.
I have 2 players that I'd like to select. Right now my build is 4-5-3-2. I almost regret taking a center now, but I don't think it's the worst case scenario for me just because I took Barkov early, but then 3 guys a bit later. In the meantime, I took 2 defensemen and 2 wingers. So I don't think it's the worst build in the world, but probably I would like to have 6 wingers here, 3 defensemen, 4 centers. I think that's pretty fair with the fact that I took really high defensemen. Any thoughts on that first off before I move forward with my next thought?
Theoretically speaking, I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm looking at your board and it's not like it's not like you took a bunch of a certain position in the first 4 rounds and are sort of building on top of it. Again, you started off 1-1-1 at 1, one of each spot, and then you sort of have been filling in as we go. So it's not like you're overly disproportionately invested in a certain position at this point. So I think your build is still makes sense.
Yeah,
though I just more wingers.
Yeah, I would like more wingers too. I mean, I'm going to take one with my next pick.
Yeah, so right now your wingers are Ehlers, Forsberg, Buchnevich, Batherson, McCann, which
they're all shooters, but none of them are elite play drivers. So I would say, which is I think Ehlers is, but
that to me is the perfect thing where it's almost like 0 RB, where you're none of these guys are definitely going to be smashes. But if I just take a bunch of them, then, they can sort of mix and match and, figure it out amongst themselves, basically, while your other positions are pretty much set. So that's certainly, I think, a fine way to approach it.
I am 5 picks away. Clayton Keller is my number one guy I want, but if I
Yep,
don't get him,
I
it's
think he's good just because you know that he's going to be like the offensive option that they
yeah.
want to
But you're up in 2.
get
I mean, are
involved.
you?
I'm yeah, I'm not taking him obviously.
That's okay. Oh, there he goes. Anyways, doesn't really matter.
Well, that's unfortunate for you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so I definitely want another center. Um, in consideration, I don't really have many stacking options. I have Couture with Kane. That seems obvious. So I think I'm just going to pull the trigger on that selection. Nico Heischer and Eric Zanek, though, I do think both would make sense. So let's see.
There's something wrong with Carter Verhaeghe because like, why is he like? That's what I'm going to take next. I think am I missing something with him? Like,
No,
he got the
I
extension.
literally,
He's
yeah,
way down the list. I mean, he fits perfectly with Barkov. So that was the other guy I
yeah,
had queued up because I was like, where is he? That's actually why I came up with the whole like you can search by team because I was like looking up Florida.
yeah. No,
So if he's
he's
there in
really
one
good.
pick, the other guy is Spencer Knight. I'm considering. I have 2 really, really, really strong goalies already though. So if he's not there at the last pick, I think 3 goalies is fine. I don't think you have to force it, but I think it's kind of like quarterback where like the optimal build will probably end up being 3 goalies regardless. Like even if you took Mahomes, like having that third quarterback could be okay, just in case of their bye week and another like couple down weeks, etc. And yep, so I'm gonna grab Carter Verhaeghe just for that. Like I said, that perfect correlation. I think he's a good player overall, and gives me a really nice correlation. So put that all together, and I get I got the Barkov with Verhaeghe. I have the nothing with Trocheck. I have the Shen Busnevich, which I think could be very sneaky upside. Kadri solo, and then I have Batherson with Shabbat as kind of my stacks put together, and then Hellebuck with maybe one of his best wingers in Ellers.
The classic correlation because Nick Ehlers is a guy who can go end to
Yeah,
end,
right.
coast to coast. So
That wins me the whole thing.
leave it behind the net, and Nick Ehlers goes coast to coast, gets you a goal. There you go, easy. Like that's why you play the games.
Yeah. So if Spencer Knight's there, I'm just gonna do it. If
So
he's
there
not there,
goes So there goes Tolvanen.
yeah,
I
I know
thought
that
you
was
were gonna
another
take
guy.
Tolvanen.
Yeah, he was the other guy. He's on my list right now. That was the
Okay.
other guy I was considering. It was between the 2, but I felt like with taking Barkov, it just makes way too much. Like Verhaeghe's gonna be his wing. But yeah, Tolvanen was the other guy I had. I think that I didn't think he'd go. I thought between the 2, I guess like ADP would say Tolvanen, but Verhaeghe just seems like the better player. At least it's one season. It's not like it's a dynasty draft. So, all right, there goes Spencer Knight. So I think I'm just gonna be out on goalie. I'm just gonna roll with Hellebuck and Talbot. Either of them getting hurt would probably sink me anyways. Or do you think I should pick up the third goalie? What do you think?
I think you're fine to go with those 2 guys. We haven't really gotten any indication that like Capo Kakinen is even a 1B there. Like it does seem like it's a clear when Talbot's healthy, he's their number 1. That could change, like Hakanen's a younger guy, so they certainly could have that in the cards. But I don't think it's worth sort of panicking and taking a third goalie. Though if there's a guy you like, I certainly don't think it's a bad idea. I do think you're fine in other positions, but yeah, I
As far
wouldn't
as
feel.
correlations here, Eberle would fit potentially, but
Yeah, we have
I don't.
no idea what they're gonna do. Obviously,
So I'm just gonna take my favorite player here. I'm gonna take Ricky Rax. Um,
yeah, no, he's good.
He's gonna. I think he had a little bit of a down year, but I think he was always a guy that we're like shot props. He's hitting every single night, and he's just not scoring because the team
Yep,
is bad. But I think they'll be
he.
improved. And
Yeah, what's really interesting is he never really seemed to get run with Zegras. I
yeah,
wonder if that changes, like
right.
like this year now that Zegras is kind of assumed to be a full grown-up NHL player. Like there's going to be no AHL trip after a month in the NHL because they need Zegras to learn how to play center or whatever nonsense that was. So I do think that like Anaheim in general, there's a lot of upside just packed into them because of just how dynamic Zegras can be as a playmaker. For my last pick on the board, I am going to grab Oliver Wahlstrom. as we talked about with Barzal, like the Eberle role could easily be filled by Wahlstrom, who reminder was playing on the third line and also was like their main power play scorer in the bubble or in the playoffs until he got hurt. Then they decided not to play Wahlstrom when he was healthy, and they lost. So whatever. Trot's gonna trots, but I think now without Eberle, Wahlstrom is going to be an everyday NHLer. He's going to have a ton of shots, and I think there's a small chance he plays with Barzal. So, as my top center, I like the fact that I have his wings in Lee and Wahlstrom. Well, potentially Wahlstrom, but definitely Lee on this roster at pretty cheap ADP cost. So that will do it for the drafts. The last few picks include Vince Dunn, Trouba, Eric Zanek, Sam Girard, and drum roll please, DJ.
Yeah, I feel like this guy took the whole time every time. So
does this guy take a goalie?
He should. He has one goalie, and that
Yeah.
goalie is Cal Peterson. So my suggestion would be just to grab Nedeljkovic and pray that Detroit is like significantly better.
Uh-huh.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I really like how my team turned out, but yep, this guy, like I said, this guy takes the whole time every single time. Like if he doesn't take a goalie, then
he was probably on auto draft and probably probably not a. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, once it won't like, I don't know, my draft still's frozen, it won't complete.
Yeah, no, same here.
We will never know.
We might never.
The rash dog took.
All right, so we're not going to go through team by team because we sort of touched on each team as we went, and especially our own teams. If you're looking at like the players who weren't drafted, is there anybody who you're like, wow, like I kind of wish I had grabbed him or whatever? Because I think there's a couple names here that I find moderately interesting.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of interesting names. Like I said, I think that a lot of people will gravitate towards Eberle because of the role's going to be huge for them, and he's probably going to be first power play, first second line. Comtois I think also is like in a like, could he get that next big step? If Anaheim's even decent, he should have a big role for them. I think with centers, there's a lot of interesting ones. I think Hischier is probably my favorite, and Zegras is probably just like right under him at 2. Like those, but those two, both of them are just awesome. So they're going to be guys I come back to because maybe you can get like a bit contrarian with one of them because a lot of people just aren't taking them. Is there anyone else? I'll pass it to you then. Is there anyone else you're thinking of?
Yeah. So, goalie wise, I think Nedeljkovic and Aiden Hill are two guys who definitely are good. Like late round, like last round, I guess goalies. If you feel like you need a third goalie, I don't really foresee a problem with those guys getting starts. So let's see. Otherwise,
Dumba didn't go.
Yeah, definitely Dumba, Martinez, I think, are two guys who have value, especially if Martinez picks up where he left off in the playoffs. Like, guy played with a broken foot and was manning the first power play and being a freaking boss. I don't know if Alec Martinez, power play one shooter, is necessarily the role that they want for this team, but it worked last year, so they might just try that again. I certainly considered last round Martinez because I had 3 defensemen. I decided to go with Wahlstrom instead, but obviously the correlation there would have been good between Patches and Martinez on the off chance that they kept that.
You know what's really funny is
What's
that if you consider Jack Eichel not a Buffalo Sabre, only one Sabre gets picked. Like it's defenseman, not one forward, and the entire team got selected. Like that's probably pretty bad. That's not a good sign.
Olofsson probably should be the guy if you're taking one. Good shooter, all of that. But yeah, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're trying to, go crazy with your last pick, like Dylan Cousins could be a guy too. Just should have an absolutely monster role with a ton of skill. If like he
Yeah.
breaks out, then you'd be like one of the only people to have him. So
Yeah, and something that we talk about for NFL, I think this will be the last thing. Then we can, go and we'll talk
yeah,
more obviously in the future about this because it's a lot of fun. But um, these late round picks, like in the NFL, like Mike Davis last year was drafted by like 5 or 10% of the field. Like he wasn't even on people's radars. Yet Christian McCaffrey got hurt week 1 or week 2 or whatever, and then Mike Davis came in and it was just a Mike Davis show. Like he smashed and teams who had him in the 17th, 18th round, they got to the playoffs. And like when you get to the playoffs, almost everyone's going to have, the best players that year. Like if Mahomes is the MVP, lots of teams are going to have Mahomes because he drags them to a win because Mahomes is drafted by every league. So it's like, you're not really gaining anything. But if like a guy like Mike Davis is not drafted in most of the leagues, then obviously teams that get out of their league can't have Mike Davis. So like he's actually a differentiator in the playoffs.
yeah,
That's the same sort of thing with this, where it's like if you're taking guys who are always drafted in the last round and they have a monster, like postseason for fantasy purposes, well, most of the teams or most of the leagues are going to have that guy drafted. So it's not that big of an edge, like if they have a huge year. But if you take a guy who's not getting drafted at all and they have a huge year, guys with monster upside like Olafson, we've seen him score in the NHL several times. It's not like his power play role is going anywhere. It's just that the team around him might be worse. So if guys like that have a great year and they're not on a lot of teams, like they're still the edge come the playoff time. And I think that's really interesting. And that's also where guys, younger guys like Zegras and Dylan Cousins and, like Jamie Drysdale, another guy in Anaheim who could have like this monster upside that we just haven't seen yet. I don't think it's a crazy idea, especially if you're doing many entries to say, hey, my last 2 picks are just going to be out there or prospects that are like mega prospects that we just haven't seen NHL roles for. Because if they hit the top 10% of their upside, you're getting so much more value than if you hit on
yes,
like a floor guy who's like, yeah, they're going to be good and give me some points here. Like that's just not as important here. So I think that's a really important thing and really interesting thing to think about as you're like going through these drafts and going through various teams and sort of preparing for the season and looking to make a profit on NHL Best Ball. So I know I talked a lot. Any final thoughts there?
no, I think that pretty much covered it up. It kind of reminded me like when I took Raquel there at the end, I was like, man, that probably wasn't that smart, but whatever, it's fine. He's not picked in every league. We can shut it down.
Yeah, no, I don't think Raquel's a bad pick at all, though. So anyway, thank you to everybody who made the time to join the draft. It's not easy to fill one of these leagues, so we got a little lucky. We got some people jumping in to help us out, so that was a lot of fun. So thanks to the people who joined, and be sure to get in our Discord. Follow us on Twitter at MorningSkatePod. Um, the talk about best ball is just picking up. Wanted to shout out Mike MK Berg, who wrote out a huge, many sentence long sort of like early thoughts on underdog strategy for this tournament. So he had a lot of good stuff there, and hopefully that continues as we get closer to the season and more people get interested in this underdog product, because it is a ton of fun. Like if it wasn't obvious, DJ and I have a blast doing these. So yeah. And any final thoughts?
No, just definitely if you haven't already, check out my Hockey Assist Network. Subscribe on YouTube, follow, do all that stuff. There's not a lot right now, but a lot's gonna come. If you one thing I'm gonna do that I'm just gonna, I guess I can announce it now if you have any interest during the season, at least for the first like half of the season, I'm gonna try to take as many GIF requests as possible. So if you're watching a game and you really want to highlight to be made into a GIF, I'm gonna try to get as many of them as possible. Eventually I may put that behind a paywall. I'm not sure yet what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna try to use this as a way to promote myself, and it's going to be a lot of endless hours. But so starting out, please ask, and I will try to accommodate. So follow Hockey Assist Network, which you can find on Instagram and Twitter, and then on YouTube.
I'll leave those links in the description of the podcast as well to make it real easy.
Thank you.
So big, definitely do support DJ because it's a pretty cool venture. Like you said, it is hockey for the visual learner. That does not apply to me. I'm definitely more of someone who enjoys listening to podcasts more than I do, videos and illustrations and stuff. But I certainly am aware that, like it is in existence that there are people who are not like me. So anyway, it's good stuff, and I'm excited to see what comes for you there. Follow me personally on Twitter. I am at Fake Moods. DJ's at DJ_Mitchell94. And again, thanks to Underdog Fantasy for hosting this, because they're the only site that does NHL Best Ball at this point in time, at least with this like top heavy GPP structure that I could find. I haven't even seen like the high stakes season long stuff for I haven't seen them post any best ball leagues. So it's
also
a
the last pick
relatively
with Radulov. I just want to make sure before we close, because people might be like, cliffhanger alert, come on. It was Radulov. You're welcome.
Interesting. Okay. It still has not updated for me, which is funny.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, we told you where to follow us, all that good stuff. So let's get on out of here. All right. From Doug, from DJ, from myself, have a good best ball season, everybody, and we will see ya.